This is the map of southwestern Asia, one of the world's most notable geographical regions. In red, situated between Israel and Jordan, is the Dead Sea. It is a salt lake bordered by Jordan to the east and Israel to the west, and its major tributary is the Jordan River. This natural wonder is one of Earth's saltiest water bodies, and that makes it a steady center of attraction for scientists and geologists. However, a recent exploration of the Dead Sea has led to a shocking discovery that baffles the entire world of science. What did the scientists discover? Could it be an unidentified sea monster that survived the sea's harsh conditions? Join us as we explore what scientists discovered at the Dead Sea and is set to shock the entire world. Located on the Jordan-Israel border, the Dead Sea is a saline lake in southwestern Asia and is almost 10 times saltier than ordinary seawater. Also known as the Salt Sea, it is situated at an elevation of 430.5 meters below sea level, making it the Earth's lowest land-based feature. The Dead Sea's main inlet is the River Jordan, but it does not have an outlet, so the only way the sea loses water is by evaporation. Its high saline level and climate makes the lake completely devoid of almost all forms of life except for algae and other microorganisms. However, many strange things have been happening around the Dead Sea, and one that baffles scientists is the discovery of a water body that turned red like blood. This is quite strange, as the last time a water body turned red like blood was in the Bible. And as we know it, the Dead Sea is quite prominent because it's been mentioned several times in the Bible, although it was not known by one name. In the Hebrew language, the water body is referred to as Yam HaMalah, which translates to the Salt Sea. While in some Hebrew prose, the Dead Sea is often called Yam HaMaveh. This means the Sea of Death due to its composition and inability to keep macroscopic organisms like plants and fish alive. That led to the hypersaline lake being known widely as the Dead Sea due to its high saline level and vast emptiness. As a prominent landmark in major history books, seeing a red pool of water turning into blood just doesn't look right or natural. This shocking discovery was made in modern-day Jordan, an area that is also known as Moab in the Bible. The pool of water turning mysteriously red right inside the Jordanian border was a huge shock that, upon discovery, the country's Ministry of Water and Irrigation had to step in. Workers from the ministry went to the location of this strange phenomenon and took samples from the water in order to find out the cause and origin of this problem. And while the Jordanian ministry has been trying to study the cause of this problem, images of this red blood-filled water have already circulated all over the internet, which has sparked many controversies. One major topic social media users brought up is the theory of this discovery being a modern plague. A lot of people succumb to the possibility of this theory being valid, as blood-red waters carry a lot of significance in the Old Testament as one of the 10 plagues cast on Egypt and its stubborn pharaoh so as to free the Israelites from slavery. According to the biblical account, God transformed the River Nile's composition from fresh water into blood. This killed aquatic life forms in the river and prevented the Egyptians from using the water in their daily activities like they usually do, as the water had become useless. Another baffling discovery was when geologists discovered that the eastern shores of the Dead Sea, where the blood-red pond was found, also happened to be the region where two iconic cities from the Bible once stood. These cities are Sodom and Gomorrah, and God allegedly destroyed them for their transgressions. But while these theories were making their rounds on the internet, the Jordanian government had been researching to see if there is an earthly reason to explain this strange phenomenon. And so it wouldn't seem like the government was taking such an issue with levity. The head of the Water and Agriculture Committee of the Al-Karat Council, Fathi Al-Huwaimal, announced that the authorities had been informed. They're beginning to work on discovering the water's source. While there are no valid explanations for now, some scientific theories were also positive to explain why the lagoon isolated from fresh water suddenly changed its color. The director of agriculture in the southern Jordan Valley, Yassin Al-Kasasba, gave his point of view, saying that this strange phenomenon is found in ponds close to seas due to a particular bacteria's presence, and also red algae that loves salinity. Algae changes its color with the presence of sunlight. However, that still does not give a detailed explanation as to why the water suddenly turned red while other pools did not display the same phenomenon, especially given that the area experiences near year-round sunny skies. However, while some people did not believe this theory, other officials postulated that the presence of iron oxide in the water could be the reason for the strange color change. Still, this reason didn't sound valid enough, as there was no explanation for how the iron oxide got into the pool and why the color transformed rapidly. Another theory came up from the head of the Jordanian geologist syndicate, Sakar al-Nusawa, when he said that the addition of substances by humans could have caused the red color. This viewpoint was shared by several Jordanians who accused the government of covering up a source of pollution or using the pool as a dumping ground for waste chemicals. So this theory traveled across social media as well, as it sounded valid enough. But unfortunately, that wasn't the actual reason for the phenomenon. A similar incident of water turning blood red happened in Israel when the Alexander River looked like the Bible's plague of blood. The Alexander River runs 32 kilometers from the hills of Nablus in the West Bank across the border into Israel and across the Mediterranean coastal plain through the Emek Hefer Regional Council, an area of rural communities, kibbutzim and moshavim, to the sea. It is loved for its wildlife and beauty, but its sudden look and pollution with blood-filled water gave the river a very eerie look. This almost became a matter of national crisis, as several media houses in Israel published photos of the red, blood-filled water in the papers and magazines. It was also widely talked about in the news and shows as the prestigious river suddenly changed its orientation and what could have caused it. It turned out that the river Alexander's appearance came as a result of blood, feathers, and other animal body parts pouring out of slaughterhouses. These animal parts came from several Palestine slaughterhouses in the northern West Bank city of Tulkarem, and unfortunately, that wasn't the first time it happened. Normally, the animal and blood waste is cleaned by a purification plant, but heavy rainfall had swamped the system and it wasn't cleared before it washed into Nahal Alexander. The unfortunate incident coincided with the previous month's heavy demand for chicken that was supplied to Israelis because of the Passover celebrations and Muslims before the month-long Ramadan festival. The terrible sight of this river led to complaints from officials, as it was almost becoming an environmental disaster. In fact, it was more of an accusation, not just a complaint. The accusation came a few months before the incident from the Society for the Protection of Nature, where they warned that Israel's tax laws have made the Alexander River turn into blood. This must have come from a place of pain, judging from the fact that Alexander is one of the most ecologically important rivers in Israel, and it's being treated that way. The association said in a statement, "Polluted runoff from slaughterhouses and other industries have polluted this river and turned it red in the middle of Passover, and it's not the first time." And to top it all off, the blood pollution happened at a time when the entire world was battling with the coronavirus pandemic, and the campaign group had urged the nation's leaders to understand how essential nature is to mental well-being. Calls were also made to the Environmental Protection Minister to deal with the issue. They advised the ministry to strive and ensure ecological plagues like blood pollution do not happen again. Well, it did, and that sure is enough to protest. The Alexander River flows from mountain aquifers and is used by the entire population of both Israel and Palestine. And 10 years ago, this river suffered the fate of environmental pollution until the tourist Israel and their Palestine counterparts came together to transform it. Now, you might think the pool near the Dead Sea probably suffered the same fate, but it didn't. With the earlier scientific theories being algae, iron oxide, or the addition of substances by humans, those theories didn't turn out to be the answer. The actual reason came a couple of weeks later and was brought by the Jordan Valley Authority, a Jordanian government agency in charge of the region's water supply. They had run a couple of tests on the water, and the results showed that the reason behind the appearance of red is due to the manganese in the water. Well, that was one weird discovery that had never been heard of before. Manganese is a naturally occurring element that is known for its frequent occurrence in the Earth's environment. It can be found in the soil, air, and water. In fact, it is also in our food. However, scientists postulated that a very high concentration of manganese could change the water's color and give it a reddish appearance, just like iron. According to a geological survey done in the United States, iron and manganese are both metals that can cause stains to plumbing fixtures or laundry. However, they are not known to be the cause of health issues. But one thing that still remains unclear is how the Dead Sea Pool has such a high amount of manganese. Discoveries around the Dead Sea are not a new occurrence, being a beacon of history right from biblical times. However, modern discoveries were not made until the 19th century. During the biblical era, several sects of Jews used to reside in caves near the Dead Sea. Some of these Jews are the Essenes, who left spectacular Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves of Qumran. Also, Sodom and Gomorrah, the famous cities talked about in the book of Genesis, are believed to have been on the Dead Sea's southeastern shore. There is also a nature reserve located near the Dead Sea, and it's called Ein Gedi. This is an area mentioned in the Bible where King David hid from Saul. The ancient history of the Dead Sea surrounds most of the Middle Eastern and Mediterranean people of the time. Examples of such people are the Nabateans, who used to harvest the Dead Sea's natural asphalt, and in all possibility were purchased by the Egyptians. Even the Romans were also in the picture, as well, as they refer to the Dead Sea as Palus Asphaltitus, which translates to Asphalt Lake. However, the best moment we can point to in the Dead Sea history in ancient times was when a small group of Jewish zealots ran to Masada. Masada was a fortress built by King Herod the Great at the time. It was constructed on a hill overlooking the Dead Sea. The Jewish zealots ran there after the Second Temple's destruction in 70 AD. Unfortunately, they didn't escape for long. They were sieged at the fortress in 73 AD by the Roman ex-legion, but they refused to give in. Rather than surrender, they opted to die by mass suicide. Greek Orthodox monks also came to this area during the Byzantine period to seek refuge. They constructed multiple monasteries near the Dead Sea, and the St. George Monastery in Wadi Kelt is one of them. However, all these incidents happened long ago and were only remembered with the help of history books. So up until the 19th century, the Dead Sea was known as a mystery to the developing world, covered in references from the Bible, but unexplored, unknown, and uncharted. Regardless, several explorers went on to begin uncovering its mysteries. The first known modern explorer of the Dead Sea was a young Irishman named Christopher Costigan, who had become fascinated by the Holy Land while he studied for the Catholic priesthood. He began his exploration in 1835 with no navigational maps to help him navigate the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, which post-dated the Middle Ages. His exploration was quite short, as it only lasted 8 days. This happened due to a lack of fresh water and an absence of winds for sailing. As there was no fresh water, Costigan had no choice but to boil and drink the brackish water of the sea. In the course of his exploration, he contracted a severe fever, which is said to be possibly a result of massive dehydration. Being in the middle of nowhere, his assistant had to leave him on the northern shore of the Dead Sea and went to seek help. He got to a nearby Greek Orthodox monastery and got help for Costigan, which a mule carried for medical assistance in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, he was pronounced dead on arrival and was later buried on Mount Zion. 13 years later, a lieutenant of the U.S. Navy, Lieutenant William Francis Lynch, was able to make more explorations than Costigan. In 1848, Lynch began an expedition to the Dead Sea with 2 boats containing a large team of men. Lynch's expedition was successful. His exploration brought forth the first published charted maps of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. The Jordan River runs along the border between Jordan, the Palestinian West Bank, Israel, and southwestern Syria. Then, over 20 years passed before a courageous Scotsman sailed past the newly opened Suez Canal and the Nile with his canoe to the region. Having traveled through the Sea of Galilee previously, John MacGregor canoed all the way from the Jordan River to the Dead Sea. He named his canoe Rob Roy, discovered in Britain not long ago. It now resides in Tel Aviv's Eretz Israel Museum. The Moabite stone was also discovered in the Dead Sea region in 1868. King Mesha of the ancient kingdom of Moab set it up. Frederick Augustus Klein, an Anglican missionary, discovered it on the plateau east of the Dead Sea. However, that discovery won't stay on for long, as it was smashed by local villagers when they argued over its ownership. The 20th century also included major discoveries, but one discovery in the late 1940s and early 1950s was one of the most significant biblical discoveries in history. This finding was the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls are hundreds of religious documents that date between 150 BC and 70 AD. They were discovered in the Qumran caves, about 1.6 kilometers from the Dead Sea's northwestern shore. They were initially discovered by 3 Bedouin shepherds in 1946 to 47. Then the caves were excavated by a team from the American School of Oriental Research. As they excavated, more scrolls were found. This goes to show that weird phenomena like this are common around the Dead Sea. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.